Today we have a very special guest, a best-selling author, serial entrepreneur and founder, podcaster, speaker, and surfer. His works and insights have been featured in Forbes, the New York Times, BBC, CNN, and many others. I'm very excited to share this conversation with Wesley Baker. Before we jump into the travel industry, which I wanted to kick things off with, why don't we start a little bit of you telling about yourself so the viewers can be a bit more familiar with you.
Okay, I'm Wesley Baker, entrepreneur, lifestyle enthusiast, best-selling author now. I started my first company when I was 13, writing software, which I then sold to an American company. So from an early age, I've basically been involved with business and everything. And then I worked my way through the travel industry and lots of other exciting things, from med tech to space tech to surfing. I've done quite a lot, done more in my lifetime than most people do in 7.
And you also have a podcast now,
is that right? Multiple podcasts.
Oh, right.
Yeah, multiple podcasts. I have ones in the travel industry and ones outside of the travel industry as well, yes.
And what's the main line of work that you do? Would that be the Pure One
Pure One
company?
Group is the main, I would say, is the main drive that I have at the moment. It's a group. It's going to be my legacy, should I say. I'm building a company that I hope will become one of the biggest and best in the UK and Europe. We have plans internationally to expand that company, and we've lots of brands already feeding off of Pure One, which is fantastic. And I really love talking about what we can do with Pure One. It's a wonderful name as well. And that's probably my drive. And then, of course, my books as well are something that I did when I was very sick. And I wrote my best-selling book and became the author because of it, whilst I was dying in hospital in ICU. So,
oh, wow.
Yes, very interesting.
When was that?
2024.
Right.
I'm still on recovery.
Oh,
about
really?
72-month recovery, yes.
Oh, that is...
long period.
That's a long period for sure. Do you want to get into this and talk about...
Sure.
What happened there?
Okay, well, it's interesting for your listeners. I had an illness called diverticular disease, which most people get at certain ages, but I had mine from the ages of 30 because of stress and everything over years of high-level jobs, created stress, and perhaps my eating wasn't the best at the time and the hours that I was working. But what happened was I developed, having had a terrible, stressful year, losing 2 members of the family, having skin cancer myself and having 2 operations on that, having a son who has a life-changing illness. He was diagnosed in 2017, so when he was 12, so I've been fighting with that to make him better. And then on top of that, let's just say that in November 2024, in a nutshell, had a perforation of my bowels. But before that happened, I had 15 centimeters of extreme swelling in there and then a 1.8 centimeter hole. It should have killed me. Only 2% of people survive.
Wow, 2%.
Yeah, you need to get to hospital within 2 hours. The ambulance didn't come for 3.5 hours. I was collapsed multiple times. The ambulance had me on ultimate to get to me, but they were short-staffed and they just had terrible trouble that day. But I survived, and purely through luck, really, or my wife has been trying to get me to lose weight for years. And the interesting thing about it was, because I hadn't lost weight, a fat pocket saved my life inside my stomach. Yeah. So it caught and stopped sepsis setting in and everything. And I was very, very ill, and I lost 3.5 stone. I've put a lot back on, but I've lost 3.5 stone at that point. So it was a massive change to me. And I realized that I couldn't carry on the way I was doing, and it was a massive life change for me. So whilst laying in ICU with tubes out of me, and decided that no one's going to know all my stories, because despite the fact I've done podcasts and speaking, people forget over time. And I decided that I would write a book. And I picked a year in my life, which was 1992, when there was a fundamental change in direction, both in career and personal life. And that I decided to write about that. As a great point. I didn't write it for people to read it. I read it for myself and my family to have something, my children to have something. And it was well supported in the travel industry in particular. It discussed my life overseas, working overseas as a overseas travel rep. I worked obviously multiple years, but it focused in that particular year, which was the Olympic year in Barcelona. And that was the area I was living in. So I discussed my life, my romances, my experiences. And yeah, that was what happened. So,
wow.
and literally because of being so ill and being bedridden for a while afterwards, I made the decision to resign from a lot of the companies I was involved with.
Right.
I still have shares in them, but a lot of the investors were unhappy because obviously they were investing in me. I'm the driving force in a lot of them, but I tried to build teams around me and educate people to step into my shoes. But I needed to resign from them. I couldn't have the pressures there. But I realized I also had so much left still to give and I wanted to do. And I thought, I have this little travel company that's ticking over that my family kind of ran. And I thought, okay, let's go for this. Let's build a team around me effectively that could take over from me and control it and grow it. And so that's what we've done. And we're in the process of building something fantastic. It's a lovely style and atmosphere. I'd like to say, and you may not totally appreciate this, Maxime, but we're a cross between Thompson Holidays used to be and Virgin Holidays. So we're kind of sitting in the middle of on the way the customer experience is.
Right.
And we've built experiences that people go on small groups, some independent travel, but mostly small groups. So that's our main company, but we also have a surfing travel company.
All right.
Called Ocean Fever.
Of course, with your surfing history.
Exactly.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
50 years I've been surfing. It's
Wow.
amazing, isn't it? God, when you think of that, half a century in the waves. Yeah, 50 years. So, I once built a surf travel company before and did it very successfully. So I was asked to get back into it. So I thought I'll incorporate this into the company, which I did. And we've also got a new thing that's coming along, which you don't know about, which is called Pure Pilgrim, which is looking at not pilgrimages as in major Christian type holidays, but where people can experience a pilgrimage for themselves, their own internal pilgrim experience. But we're going to be doing something very special to Egypt soon,
Wow.
which is this is no one else knows this, so you're the first person to know this.
Oh, yes?
We're launching a thing called the Holy Trail, which is the Holy Trail is a thing in Egypt where the Holy Family went for 3 years when they were being persecuted. But the Egyptian Tourist Board and our office in Egypt, we do Egypt within our main program.
Yeah.
We've got exclusive rights to do it, so we're putting it together.
Exclusive rights?
Yeah, so it's going to be really amazing. We've got a boat that actually sails from Cairo all the way down to Luxor, which the other boats don't normally do because the water gets shallow, but our boat is shallow draft, so it can go the whole way. So much exciting. So we've got that. We've got Pure Vacations, which is a content-driven site, and we love doing that, and we're expanding on that. It's got its own podcast, of course, as you know.
Yes.
And it's just a whole host of things that we're loving doing. And on the business front, we do a thing which is MICE. Are you aware of what MICE is?
No, I've not heard of it.
Meetings, incentives, conference and events.
Okay.
Relatively new word in the travel industry, but it's where we're putting on small retreats and conferences, and we're aiming that as the small to medium businesses. And so we're organising for a lot of other network groups these trips overseas. I'm using all our expertise to do that. That's growing tremendously, so we're really pleased with that. So that is a very, very quick whiz around where I am and what I'm doing now.
First of all, it sounds awful to have such a diagnosis and done so suddenly. I'm really sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah.
How long did it take for you from like the day that I guess it happened to making all these decisions to take a 90 or 180 degree turn and resign from the companies and pivot?
Well, my last hospitalization was the end of January 2025. By the end of February, I'd already made those decisions and realized that my life was no longer the life that it once was, and that I had a long recovery path ahead of me, and I needed to change that. And so that's what I did.
How do these decisions come? Do you just know? Did you think long and hard about it? Was it like a suggestion and a meeting with your family? How do you come to that conclusion?
I live on a beach, live by the beach in Whitstable in Kent, and I was looking out from my bed. I was looking out at the sea, and it just came to me.
Right.
I thought, what do I really want to do with my life?
Right.
I've done so much across so many fields, and I've been happy, but what really drives me and I decided that the travel industry and leisure and media is what I wanted to do, how I wanted to move forward. So I went ahead and pursued and thought, well, how could I do that? And then it was about the team. How can I build a team around me?
Yeah.
I was fortunate that my daughter is highly qualified and was struggling to get a PhD. She does infectious diseases. She actually did something to do with Ebola, which they ended up using for COVID.
That's amazing.
But because of the way the science industry is, she found it near enough impossible to get a PhD because it was always going to the male applicant, and it was always the
male applicant, like the guys.
Yeah, the men were.
What?
Men were. Yeah, it's so men orientated, despite the fact that previous governments and new existing governments all try to make that different.
Even in the UK.
Even in the UK,
Whoa.
it is focused. It's so hard for a woman to be successful in science at the highest level. There are some that make it.
Yeah,
but it's hard. I mean, the PhDs come up, and all these ladies are applying, and they're very good at what they're doing, and there'll be a few men that apply, and they get the job, and it's always the old men that are making the decisions. So it is very sad because she's really clever when it comes to infectious diseases, and
sounds like it. If she has something to do with Ebola and COVID,
a real talent. But rather than her just waste that talent, I said, well, why not start working for me on product? And because she's very picky in what she does. She looks at things and controls things. And I was quite surprised, actually, with her level of work, and it got better. And I thought, she's the best product person I've ever worked with. And that's not because she's my daughter, because I give her a harder time because she's my daughter.
Right.
She doesn't get to escape from me. She gets me 24/7. She still lives at home. So she gets dad at 1 o'clock in the morning saying, why wasn't that done? Or but she has produced the most incredible work and packages, and then on top of that, when I put her on business trips, the feedback I get is wonderful. So I'm kind of handing the mantle to her. She's wonderful. So it's been a blessing in disguise.
And the product is to do with packages revolving around traveling, right?
She designs them. So she puts them together. They're mainly aimed at adults between 23 to 55. Okay. Most of our customers are in their late 30s and early 40s. And what we try to do is she puts together every experience. So she looks at it in detail. It could be a cultural pathway tour. It could be an adventure-based thing. It could be paranormal. We have a few new we're one of the first companies in the world to do a paranormal experiences,
wow.
which is really exciting. UFO hunting, ghost hunting, all on the same tour.
I've seen a ghost hunting experience, travel included in the US, but that was the only place I've seen.
And they're very expensive. The ones I've seen are like £18,000 as a cheap compared to substantially 1/10 of that. So it's that's one thing we've launched. We've launched something that we loved it. She's put together language journeys, which is going overseas to become involved with the culture and to learn a language there whilst you're experiencing it. So you go to have your Spanish lesson in the morning, and then you go out with your Spanish teacher, and you go to a restaurant, or you go out somewhere unique, and it's beautiful, put together.
What's been the most go-to and successful and most in demand?
I guess Pathways is the one where people like to go off the beaten track, which is what our tours do. We don't. So if we go to, for example, Italy, we won't necessarily go into the Vatican. We may visit it, but we go to the church around the corner, where all the best way of describing our company is where all the Instagrammers go. Right. We kind of go, because no other travel company does. So we kind of look to where they're going and we think, okay, that's a good idea. Mm-hmm. We like that. And so we take them to churches that are fantastic, for example, beautiful buildings that they would never have normally visited. And so those type of things we're looking all the time. Surfing is an interesting thing. We get people going on surf trips as well. Within the main experience, we have special weeks within the Pure One travel program that is just aimed for learning to surf. So... yeah, interesting.
And it's a destination plus surfing, right?
Yeah. So we try to, we have an option of how people travel. They can either pick the type of experience they look and find the one that they want to, whatever country, or they can look at the countries and then find what's in that country that they can do. And we've moved more and more from independent travel. When I say independent, it's called a FIT.
What is that?
Free independent travel is what it means. We've moved more towards small groups.
Right.
which is where, surprisingly, that younger generation is looking to travel now. They don't want to go in the large groups of 50, 60 coaches. They want to go somewhere between 8 to 20 people. And they want to experience.
That sounds like good size.
Small little group where the cultural dynamics are fun, and they get to experience everything in small environments.
I think you also get to meet people a lot easier when it's like up to 25.
Friends. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I find that, around London, there's so many of these like members clubs.
Yes.
And I find that the very big ones, which have like 200 plus members, you only end up meeting maybe 3, 4, or 5 people over like a half a year
Yes.
that you're there.
Yes.
But whenever you join a club which has 25 or 30 people, suddenly you know everybody,
Yes.
all 25 and 30.
Yes.
So I think also like these group sizes of 20, you said 8 to 20 people is fantastic because you can really get to know everyone.
It is. And if you then take that on our other model, which is the business, Pure One Business is what we call Pure One Business. And how that works is that we have these small network groups. They might have 100 members or whatever, but they go on, we put together a retreat for them and experience. So they can be involved talks and everything else, but they go out and do experiences as well. But that's exactly what you're going to experience because it's normally 14, 15, 20 people, no more.
Yeah.
And despite the fact we could put on an event for 1,000 people, we don't. We put on these small ones and they travel to these destinations, they experience it. And they get to meet everyone on there. And the networking is so easy to be done. It's not walking around a room. You're in an environment, you're having breakfast with them, dinner with these people. You're out perhaps riding a horse together. All these type of experiences that really gel. And then there's so much business is done in an environment like that compared to being in a normal networking event. So we're pushing more and more of that. And one of our customers is actually looking to do an event every single month now overseas.
Oh.
That's the aim. Yeah.
So have you launched this after 2024?
Yes.
And why did you decide to do exactly this? Because it sounds like you're not necessarily doing this only for profit maximization.
No, we want to do it. Originally, I wanted to launch a big travel business to compete against some of the biggest in Europe. That was the plan, and that we've kind of scaled down that plan a little bit. And I wanted to concentrate on sustainable travel a little bit more.
Oh, really?
So although we do some destinations that you have to fly to, the majority of our future destinations from 2027 onwards will be mostly operated via coach or rail.
Okay.
So we keep that in, and the long-term aim of the company is that you'll book we're going to have some high street travel agencies as well.
Yes.
So you'll be able to go and visit a travel agency, which will be a coffee shop as well, coffee and a wine bowl in one type of experience.
And the travel agency
in the travel agency,
right?
And then you'll be able to book there as well as booking online. And you'll actually go in one of our coaches, which will probably be an electric coach. It won't be initially, but it will be in the future because we will own the coaches in the future. At this moment, we're renting those, but we'll be actually buying the coaches. You'll travel in one of our coaches, which will be electric, so it's all sustainable, and you'll travel on one of your trips around Europe. It's as simple as that. I had
quite a few environmental experts on the show, and everybody finds this to be important for different reasons. Why is that important to you?
The world needs us. Yeah. The humankind has desecrated the planet, and there's certainly the younger generation realize this more than the older generation. And we realize that we have to have changes. I'm not one of these people that shouts Greenpeace and all that type of thing. That's not me. But I can look at science and see science says one thing. Yeah. And you can't just carry on down the same road, a bit like politicians, down the same road until they hit the wall. You have to make changes. Now, the trouble is just one country making that change is not good enough. So as a company, we're trying to expand across Europe. So we're looking at France, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Finland, Sweden, Norway in the future. So we want to be a network that enables people to still enjoy traveling, but in a sustainable way. That's what drives me. In that I would like the footprint to be as close to zero as possible.
Yes.
And that includes we're intending to purchase hotels and lodges, small hotels and small lodges, and make them sustainable as well. So you will eventually have this footprint, say in 10 years' time, that is fully sustainable from the moment you book.
That's amazing. And I really agree with the fact that if just one or two countries do make change, it won't move the needle. I always think of Switzerland, which my sister lives in Switzerland, and she's got a spa there, which is the same business that I'm running here in the UK. And Switzerland are excellent at recycling, taking care of
Very
nature.
clean country.
But every effort that they do in a year, you go to a country in Asia, Indonesia, where I have lots of work with, or Vietnam, and I feel like one day there completely
Wipes
overruns
out everything they're doing.
they've done in a whole year.
Yeah.
And it's great that Switzerland exists and countries like that because we can look up to them and hopefully reach for it. But I always thought that if corporations find both a profitable and I guess a demand-driven way to make these changes, it might move everything faster.
I think, yes, I agree with you on that. And I think education is crucial in those countries as well.
Yes.
And I think you're opening up a can of worm there, just can of worms, just talking about that, because of I believe that there are ways to make energy in the world that we already know, and governments already know, certain governments and the oligarchs and everything of the world and the oil barons, they don't want this technology to come because that's the end of motor cars, that's the end of energy in the way that we do now. And I'm quite convinced about that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I've looked into all this stuff, and I know categorically that it exists. Tesla knew that.
What kind of energy sources could those be?
There is electricity around us. When we make electricity produces more electricity at a higher rate. So how's that possible? So we already know this technology exists, and I think we've known. Scientists of various forms have known about this for over 100 years. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. Please do go ahead. I do categorically believe that we're entering a really interesting period of the world and humankind history as well. And I think when we look at it sensibly, I think that man has the capability to do a lot more than it is doing. And it's the greed of money, the greed of the few that is stopping mankind achieving amazing things. And that's truthfully what I believe.
I definitely agree that it would be an absolute catastrophe for let's just broad term, for the stock market, if it turns out that you don't need energy in the way that it is.
But if it's free energy, if you had free energy that you could provide a box or whatever one-time box to a home, and then it's free energy for the rest of the life. Yeah. If you had that same energy being put into cars or even vehicles, because if you change the way I don't know the full science of it, you change the way the electrics are done and you create a sphere around, and it's possible to do this, then you don't actually need wheels or anything, and the thing levitates.
Not meaning
it's not anti-gravity. It's a thing. I don't mean to go down this route, by the way. This is just an interesting conversation.
No, let's continue, because I'm all for it. You
probably didn't expect it from me either.
Well, that's what I love about long form conversations. Instead of doing a news style interview where you have to follow a script and everything is pre-agreed, we can get into whatever interests us and jump onto the other art. Exactly. But I not to play the devil's advocate here, but just the first thing that comes to mind, wouldn't some of the big companies like, I don't know, NVIDIA and the other giants that really rely on energy, wouldn't they be able to hire a couple scientists to figure it out and profit from that? Or how can that be how does the gatekeeping, could it work if, let's say, the government knows, again, putting our full hat on?
I'm quite convinced that there is different levels in the way the world runs.
Okay.
I think you can look at that from the economics of the world and what happens, the wars that go on and everything else, who benefits, who doesn't benefit on a big scale, who's making big money on all the time. And I think, yes, your argument is correct, but what about if they're below that pay grade? They're not in that club.
Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't see... There is that argument. I really understand that argument, and I fully appreciate that argument. But what if they're just no different to you and I?
Okay, what if they're lower?
They're not in that club. Just because they've got a company that's successful and it's the biggest tech company in the world doesn't mean to say that they've got the tech to do it. There are other companies that have tech supposedly far greater and far more superior than those companies.
That maybe is just not necessarily released.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this new UFO files that have been released in the US?
Yeah, I know all about them, yeah.
What do you think of that? Because it seems like they've really censored out all the juicy stuff, but from what they released, what do you think of that?
Okay, I think, first of all, look at it this point of view. A president changes every 4 years in the United States.
Yeah.
so they're never going to tell the president everything.
Yeah,
it's the same here in the UK and across most political democracies of the world.
Yeah,
where the civil servants control the country. It's not the politicians. The politicians stand in front and say what they want to and try to put policy into it, but the civil servants control everything. So I think realistically and fairly, I think that there has been enough evidence released to open that question immediately. What is amazing is, why did some of the British media, for example, not even cover it?
I find that interesting.
All over the American media.
Yeah.
It was all main news in the American media, and it wasn't even mentioned in the UK media.
I found it suspicious. Not even suspicious. I found it surprising. I thought it's pretty. People would click on it. People put headlines that people click on, regardless of the content. That's the headline that would get you clicks.
Is it because the British people are a little bit more reserved, maybe, and they think people are reserved? But I don't think that's the case. I think, truthfully, the release files, they've shown that there is something, and they don't understand it. They're not saying it's extraterrestrial. They're saying something exists, something's happening. Craft are existing. It's not American technology. It's no one's technology on human technology that we know of. It's very active in the oceans.
Yeah,
it's becoming more active. Royal Navy is engaged in stuff. The Royal Air Force is engaged in stuff in the UK. Same in the United States. So I think all the evidence is there. It's how you want to sit back and take it. Do you really listen to the evidence, look at it and say, okay, and don't become devil's advocate, but you sit there and you say, oh, well, it's rubbish, it's pie in the sky, it's UFOs, and put an enigma behind it? Or do you look at it and say to yourself, actually, there is something, we don't know what it is, but we should be trying to find out. And it should be national and it should be open books. I believe in the United States, there is an awful lot that hasn't been released, but let's just not talk about the United States. The United States is one country.
Yeah.
This happens across every country of the world. Every country has experienced it, from the massive loads of sightings in Peru, in the UK, Spain, Portugal, Italy. They're all having the same things, and it's the same type of craft, the same type of images, same experiences. So I think even when you go back to World War II, when we had the first, what I would say, first aviation warfare that was going on a large scale. The bomber crews came back and reported things, lights following them in the sky. And some of these things are natural weather, effectively, and are natural things, but a lot of it is not. So if only 10% of what they're talking about is true, that 10% is true then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which means we have something, and it's not a problem. It just means we don't understand what it is. And if it is that higher intelligence, if it is something else, then then we should be honest about it and start looking at it.
I do think that a lot of this, like the term aliens or something extraterrestrial. That's right.
Yeah.
It could be used as something that, like a blanket that gives shape to something that we don't know or understand.
Yes.
We see a light that follows a plane, and we don't understand, let's say, the physics of it. Just like 1,000 years ago, they didn't know that you can make electricity.
Exactly.
And we say that's aliens. But then, what if that's not the case? And then what if it's?
Well, that I've had 2 UFO encounters in my life.
So tell me about that.
The first one was in the 1980s. Okay. And the second one was relatively recently, a few years ago. The first one was I was in my parents' house. I was a young boy, and it wasn't just me. A lot of people reported this at the time. And we have a place called Duncan Downs in my town in Whitstable, and we saw a group of lights that were hanging over the top of the downs. And this was probably under half a mile away, but it's a natural park, so up on top. And they were changing colours. Now, we had RAF Manston, which was an Air Force base at the time down there, and we were used to having Phantom planes and American planes flying around in helicopters. Yeah. This wasn't that. It went back for a good 30 minutes, just back and forth over the hill.
What kind of lights? Like something that an airplane looks in the background, or was a sky lit up with a flashlight?
No. It was kind of like a brighty goldy sort of colour, and then it went a reddy colour. and then there was a bit of a blue in it, and then back to white, and then this is the crucial bit. It then shot off so fast that we visually lost it. And then we knew. Now, we all kept quiet about that, but my mother worked in the local newspaper. She kept quiet. She said, well, we keep quiet because you do, you don't want to be called a loony. People started coming into the newspaper and saying that they'd seen lights, that they'd seen something fly over the sea and fly out to sea. And then the investigation, just locally, the newspaper contacted the air traffic control at Manston. Did you have anything? No, there was nothing flying. Was there anything secret on the books? No, nothing going on. All this sort of stuff. Air traffic control had nothing. There was no radars, nothing. And you've got to remember, and just jumping forward to today, the technology we have now is so advanced, and that's why we're seeing everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Our cameras are picking things up. Radar is so more advanced than it was 20, 30 years ago. That we are seeing things that previously you couldn't see. Yeah. And that makes a difference. So like you said, they've always been there maybe. We just never seen them. And then anyway, and the second occurrence happened, we'd been out watching the Northern Lights and everything, and we came home.
Here in the UK?
Yeah. We had some great Northern Lights not so long ago. And
it's been a whole year of like great Northern Lights.
A couple of years actually.
Oh wow!
Amazing, some amazing footage. I'll send you some.
Yes, please.
You'll be quite shocked at what we were getting. And so we drew back at our house, which is by the beach anyway. And the kids went in, well, they're adults now, and my wife went in, and I was standing there, and then this light appeared. It was a green light, and I thought, oh, this is a helicopter, but there was no noise, nothing, and it was just there, and it moved around, and it was some distance away in the sky, and you can never accurately, when you're looking up to night sky, accurately predict
the distance, of course.
Yeah. But we're quite lucky because we have a lot of flight paths going past the area to go into London City sometimes. So I know roughly the distance of the sky. And I was looking at it, and it was quite a few thousand feet up, And then that just shot off straight towards the North Sea, boom, like that. And I was shaking, and I came in and I said to my wife, I did take a photograph actually. And you kind of got it green on the photograph. And I said to my wife, you never believe what happened. She said, oh, here we go. You conspiracy theory. I said, no, this isn't conspiracy theory at all. This is what I've just seen, and look. And they were like, oh, wow. And so that was something as well.
Could it be a meteor? No.
Well, a meteor doesn't stay still.
No, it doesn't. And
it doesn't move around a little bit and doesn't fly off. And a meteor, when it enters an Earth's atmosphere, it will then explode or disintegrate and disappear. This flew and went, and so it was visually,
it's like a bright light, like an exploding star.
And the visualization was it still stayed as strong as it was until it was out of sight, out of visual view.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and
that's something we didn't expect to go down in this conversation.
That's so interesting. I wish there was good footage of. You said you took a video of that. How good is that?
That's a slide. Well, that's the trouble, and this is always the argument, isn't it? Is there good footage? Is it AI generated and everything else?
Oh yeah, because now everything can be AI. And you can barely check it. That's annoying.
That's the other thing. I think there is footage out there. There's been a lot of footage, and a lot of footage is there and is evident. Even some of the files that were released by NASA, and NASA's supposed to be a public service organization. Why is it hiding stuff? And recent images have come out when they were on the moon.
Yeah,
where they can actually see lights and orbs, and it was reported. And when the Apollo 17 astronauts, for example, who reported stuff, when they originally came out and said stuff in recent years, people laughed at them and said, no. But now it's been released that they did actually see stuff on the moon. They did see things. The same with Mars.
I'm actually not aware. What kind of stuff have they seen?
Oh, well, there was lights monitoring them. There was objects in the sky.
Apollo 2, that happened in the 70s, not
the Apollos happened. Yeah, Apollo 11 to 17.
Not this recent Artemis 2.
No,
the first ones.
Yes, the first ones. And they a couple of them saw stuff, and it was reported at the time.
They all disappeared very suspiciously.
Yeah.
Very suspiciously. Yeah. Very quickly after the...
And everything to do with... There's a whole... We're opening up a can of worms here. There's a whole host of different stories that all run a line, but there are physical photographs that they exist that have now been released that actually show something they're watching in the distance.
Is it released like with the recent... files?
Yes, I believe it is in.
I should check it out.
And there's also some to do with Mars as well. The Mars rover happens to pull up and it's taken a shot in Mars and on the horizon. There's objects on the horizon.
They now found these interesting remained like on rocks. They found a pattern which is identical to how fungus leaves a mark when it dies. So they have like a very good argument here to say that there was fungus, which is life.
Well, there must have been life on Mars because we can see evidence of rivers and all that there. Now, we understand what we believe we understand. Scientists believe we understand why Mars was no longer habitable because of the core of the planet and it lost its atmosphere. Now, that could well be what the Earth's heading for. Who knows? With global warming, that could well be something that we end up with. But over millions of years, and if that's the case, then who knows? I mean, I love the period we live in now. I love finally. Now, I don't like Trump. I think Trump's trouble.
Everyone's like that.
But I do like the fact he's released some things and he's got his act together. And apparently they're going to be consistently releasing material.
Oh, that would be nice.
But I think this is all to do with actually announcing something. And I think this is all a genuine
do you think they're like preparing?
Conditioning the humans. Think about it recently. Okay. If you think of the last 5 years, how much has been spoken about on YouTube, on television, in documentaries, all these whistleblowers that have come out, all these experts, not only in America, but across the UK and around the world.
But they're also doing this interesting thing, and Joe Rogan talks about it a lot. He says that some of these whistleblowers are saying such goofy stuff.
Yes.
And it seems like absurd. And there's almost like...
You kind of want to ridicule them. You look at them and you think...
It almost seems like...
You need to go to a nut house. But then, are these things real, and are we the absurd ones for thinking they're not?
Well, I was actually going to go down a different path. If I was going to be in head of world order and I wanted to make sure that people don't believe in this whole there may be something we don't know, I'd put in a little bit of oil into this jar of honey and ruin it. I'd throw in a couple of these people who say that the UFO was this red color, and then in the next podcast they say, actually, I think it was blue, and ruin the whole party for everyone.
That's what they've been doing for 50, 60 years.
And then you can make the argument, I've listened to a couple of people, they're all saying nonsense, because the majority of people are actually there just to confuse and make like a bad argument, so that the people that are making the good argument get lost. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yes, I do. Yeah, exactly. You muddy the water so much that you can't actually see the truth that's there.
Yeah, muddy the water. That's a good way of putting it.
And I think that is happening but not just in UAP or UFO stuff. It's happening in politics. It's happening in business. That's a technique that you use. You muddy the water.
It's a good technique. You send in a bad couple to... Yeah. Going back to our previous conversation, you said that NASA is a civil organization.
Yes.
Do you think, if you were in charge of NASA, would you think it would be a good idea to release everything that we think we know to the public?
I think we what would be the consequences today if President Trump or NASA, the president or CEO of NASA, came out and said, "Oh, by the way, we know there's alien technology. We know something's visiting this planet. We don't know how they're getting here, but they're here. We don't know anything about them. We've seen them on the moon for the last 40 years. We've seen them in Mars. We know they're all around." And there you go. What would happen? You said it earlier. Stock market crash.
Yeah.
People panic. Supermarkets going crazy. Everyone grabbing everything. Oh my God. Mars Attack movies being played constantly on TV.
Yeah.
You can see everything now.
Yeah.
The humans are programmed in a way. We are pre-programmed and we react.
Yeah, we're very impulsive.
We're highly intelligent being, but we're also really backward when it comes to things. And I think it would cause chaos. And that's why I said I wondered if this is some form of long-term release period. So if you're releasing stuff now that the generation coming up that maybe are aged 10 to 20 take it for granted, by the time they're age 40, you're already in this, or even a faster timetable. You've already got this younger generation that maybe up to the age of 30 that already say, actually, I do believe this stuff, or a vast majority of them do. As the older generation's dying off, it no longer is a question of if they appear. Of course, we know they appear, but what are we doing? we've gone down a massive rabbit hole.
That's
I
great.
tell you,
And I was going to
interesting
say,
one.
another way to look at it is maybe the reason Trump's doing it is to get the attention of the people from the bad publicity that he's getting all the time into something. Muddy the water.
Exactly, muddy the water, because he's got paedophile comments going
Absolutely.
on. He's got all this war in Iran stuff going on. I mean, let's face it, he hasn't delivered on the Ukraine campaign. So if you look at it from that point of view, he's got an economy that's failing. Petrol rates going crazy, and he's effectively near enough, probably come the half-term elections in November, I think they are, he will become a lame duck president.
Yeah.
The question is what's he going to try to do? Is he going to try to stay on? He's got this Trump 2028 hats he's going around. I mean, is he trying to head towards an authoritarian, which I think they already are very close to it, but is he trying to push it that way?
I always thought that he might do that. I think the easiest way to do it is just to get the prime minister to... They've done that in Russia in 2012, where... Vladimir Putin came off. The vice president became the president, and actually the main player was the vice president.
Yeah. But he couldn't become president again. He would become vice president.
Well, by the American Constitution, yes, but
But and it's whether they would then change it. But I don't think the American people. I don't think America's that far down the road.
Yeah,
I don't think it would be accepted as it was in Russia. It was quite. Putin was already controlling a lot of what was going on and had built that position over many decades behind the scenes after the 1990s. He was already moving his pieces. His chess game was already in play. In fact, the West, I don't think, even acknowledged. They just thought it had finished. The Cold War had finished. And no, they weren't. They were playing a long game. And the long game, yes, it changed their economy. But, although I've read some really interesting stuff today about the Russian economy and documents that have leaked showing the state of the economy and how bad it is at the moment and what's going on there. And I know people in Russia that have messaged me as well and have said, similar sort of stuff that, that things are quite bad there. So who knows? Who knows?
I hope the US will be fine. Me and my partner, our end game plan is to go to Texas, get a farm, and
oh really? I always wanted a ranch.
Yeah, a ranch.
I wanted a ranch and a vineyard in America. That was my dream. I mean, I've lived in America, and it's a beautiful, beautiful country. I was there. The last time I was there was 2013 to 2020.
All right.
And I was in Medical Alley, which is in Minnesota, and it's Minneapolis, St. Paul, and it runs from Minneapolis, St. Paul down the Mississippi River. And there's about, I think there's 676, or there was when I was 676 when I was there, medical device companies there, or med tech companies.
Oh, wow.
So it's like the place to go.
And you were in med tech at that time?
Well, yeah, I had very wonderful opportunity. There was a company in Canterbury that developed this technology that was effectively a sniffer and could sniff out bombs and chemicals. And they were
a medical device.
No, it wasn't quite a medical device in that. It was being developed by the Ministry of Defence and other stuff as well.
All right.
And it was very, very interesting. And they asked me to come on on the board. But before I joined them, I said to them, "Well, what did you set out to do with this technology originally?" And they said, "Oh, it was supposed to be medical." And they told me the story of how it happened. The inventor was watching a pane of glass on a cold day and the water dripping down.
Okay.
And he thought, if we could be able to understand everything and be able to pick up what's in the air, we would be able to detect stuff. And so that's where the technology came from. And he wanted to use it for medical. And I said, "Well, why are you doing bombs and chemical detection when your original plan was medical?" And they said, "Well, we've never been in medical and we don't know how to do it." And I said, "Well, let me go to the US and find out." And there was this medical medtech conference in Minneapolis. And for the first time in my career, I didn't do a lot of research. I normally research before I go to a conference.
Yeah.
And I didn't do a lot of research. I just flew in. And I arrived that night or that afternoon, and then I went to the next day to the conference, but I was overslept a little bit. I came down, I was about 20 minutes late getting into this conference. I opened this big door, and there was a couple of thousand people in these rooms, all round tables, and someone was speaking. There was big screens. The only table I could see with any space was right near the front. And when I sat down on this round table, and this is like the type of character I am, I'm not worried about anyone, and I could see these old men standing there and everything, and I just sat down, and at the break, they all said, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm from the UK. And you've flown in from the UK for this? I said, yeah. I said, and this is what we do, what we're going to be doing, which was detecting diseases by breath. And I could have picked up their chins all the way around the table. They were like, wow, is that possible? I said, yeah, we've got the technology to do it. And they were like shocked. And it turns out that these people were CEOs of some of the biggest medical companies.
Okay,
pharmaceutical
you're in the right room.
And the medical insurance companies and Medical Alley as well at the time. And they were all around this table. And so I've gone and sat on the best table. It's like being promoted from non-league football to the Premiership and being sitting, suddenly you're playing in a Champions League position.
Wow.
It was fantastic. And so they were so kind. They have a thing in Minnesota called the Minnesota Nice.
Yep.
And that is that people are genuinely really nice to you. In fact, it's one of the only states I've experienced it where they literally go above and beyond.
Oh, wow.
And so they just started saying, well, give me a call, and then they started calling me and I started to meet people. And then I met a few other people and I went out and met some people in an antique shop owner, and she became friends, and which I had to go and meet her husband because her husband was probably thinking, hello, what's going on here?
Yeah,
because there wasn't that many British there. So the English accent came across very well. And so I had let's just say that the female market was very proactive.
The
and my wife
makes you feel very intelligent, like everyone.
It seemed to work in Minnesota, and it was quite fantastic. So it opened up a lot of doors for me, and they opened up so much, and we were pursuing this technology. But the trouble we were up against was there was a lot of big med tech companies, I won't mention names for slanderous reasons, that would want to buy the technology or take
bury it.
Of
course.
Because it made a lot of their technology invalid. And there was more money in their technology than there was in us. So I had to go also with a different medical idea. So originally I was pitching, well, we can we can literally save you so much money and all that. And the hospitals would say, well, the doctor would say, well, I love the technology, what you're trying to do, and it's going to be fantastic. But we don't make the decisions. The accountant makes the decisions. And you go to the accountant, so I'm going to save you all this money. Well, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, but it's saving lives and this money, No. We don't want to know what diseases they've got and treating them at this point in time because we're a business.
Yeah,
we need to make money. So I had to go back to the drawing board, had to reinvent how I could sell it to the American market for investors and everything else.
Yeah.
Which would be a totally different model to how I'd sell it in the UK.
Of course.
So the UK and some of the European being a socialist medical system, where it's right. So
the government will.
So you need to save money. So for the NHS, it was about saving money. For the Americans, it was about making money. So the pitch I would give would be very different.
That's interesting.
The pitch was very much, well, you could detect all these diseases, but you'd be able to treat them earlier and carry on detecting more diseases as they go on. So you're going to be spending more money rather than having one hit when they've got cancer at this stage and they die.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're actually going to be treating them for a whole host of diseases over a period of their lifetime. They're going to be healthier. They're going to be more of a customer for you, and that's better.
Subscription you can't unsubscribe for.
Yeah. And for the medical insurance companies in the United States, I was pitching it very simply. Imagine if you could test your patients and they could get a discount and you knew their medical history before, rather than just medical tests. You could take a breath test and screen for 20 illnesses.
So how does this technology work?
Well, it didn't come to market eventually, but let me explain to you. You within your body, within your lungs, and there are a couple of companies trying to do it now. Unfortunately, the company I work for, I left that company, and then 2 years later that went down. But they just didn't get the investment. Your body produces chemical reactions to every illness in your body. Okay, so you're exhaling loads of different chemicals all the time. So when you have an illness,
are you? Because I thought you're just exhaling.
No, you're not. Yeah. Let me explain. Your blood interacts with your lungs. Okay, and there's a chemical reaction when you have a disease. So any illness, even a virus, even COVID, has a signature. Biomarkers.
Yes.
Okay. So I haven't spoken about this since 2021, 2022. So this is going back in my brain cells. That's nearly 5 years.
COVID time.
Effectively in the Vox area of your lungs, that's the lower half of your lungs. Okay. That is where you need the chemical signature to come from. So every illness you have in the human body has a marker signature, but we need to identify that. So if you're drinking coffee or something, that can affect the signature as it comes up. So the biomarker can be identified. So once you've identified an illness that is connected to that biomarker, you follow
following.
You've got the detection. And there are already breath biomarkers in existence.
And
400 odd, actually.
Is it it's in the liquid of your breath? Like it's like in essentially
it's
the
vapor, particles, the vapor
particles,
that comes out,
and then you can see the signature, the biomarker.
What happens is very clever technology. This was very clever technology that we were using. It's patented, so I can still talk about it a little bit. But effectively, what happens is that it's a bit like a counter, really. All the molecules go through and then are hit with a laser beam that then identifies and knows how to separate it, and it's separated out. Separation process happens with a special chemical that's in there.
And what kind of chemicals? Is it like all the hormones? Like you just be like the mix between like
everything. It breaks down everything. I mean, you can see everything. And the point is that we identified, for example, when the COVID pandemic happened.
Yeah.
I contacted Matt Hancock at the time in the UK. Months before the pandemic hit the UK, we were already seeing what was going on in China.
Wow.
I remember reaching out, and January the 10th, I think, is when I wrote to them and contacted them and said, "We've got technology that's going to help you. This is pandemic; it's coming your way. It's going to be major. We have technology that you can put on all the airports and everything else, and you can solve this problem. We can identify COVID or the group of illnesses connected to that virus chain, and then we could really seal the borders effectively, or at least monitor what's coming in and quarantine." But
very quick question: how long does it take for you to see the results of the test? Is it immediate or
minutes?
So technically, at the border, you could actually test someone and either turn them back.
I mean, when I left the company, the technology was getting down to literally, between 1.5 minutes to 30 seconds. And that was coming down all the time, and also the device to do it. Because originally, when it was done, it was on a big device. Then we were looking at other devices, and other competitors were having face masks, which are still out there. There are some other breath technology out there, but ours was slightly different. It was you were breathing into a machine with a disposable, which was then thrown away. Then we flushed the system, but the machine would read it all the time, and AI was monitoring it.
Wow!
So literally, instead of having massive devices doing it all you needed was the device just to do the initial analysis, and it sends it straight up, and the AI would then look at it and say, because it would take a human days upon days to look at one person. The AI would look at it instantaneously and say, yes, this is a case we've got to be careful of. This person's got a signature for this, got a signature for that.
And I guess you teach this AI by giving it like samples of
The AI would know exactly what the biomarkers were, because the biomarkers have already been found for the diseases. But these biomarkers are already discovered because other universities and everything have already discovered these across the world. So we already know what the biomarkers are for certain diseases.
Okay, so the biomarker is a technology and a theory that already exists.
The biomarker is a signature.
It's
your personal. It's like a fingerprint.
Yeah.
Every disease has its fingerprint.
Oh, wow.
And that was how we were finding. And so literally the technology will be out there. So this was Star Trek technology. Okay.
That sounds like it would really help.
Yeah.
So you
but
said
getting funding for it?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh wow.
Because you see, investors, small time investors, they weren't the problem. The problem was the next stage, the big time investors, because the big time investors are invested in all the pharmaceutical and all the medical device companies. You need multi millions, and then you have to go. And this was the frustrating thing. You've got all the medical trials you need to go on. Right? So this technology is already there, and what I was trying to circumvent it cleverly, actually, because there was two ways to I found that I could circumvent it. Was one is, instead of saying that we were diagnosing, we were screening them. Okay. So thus we wouldn't need all the medical tests at that point. The trouble was that we were screening them so early that there was no other technology able to say this person's actually got lung cancer, and this person's got pancreas cancer.
Yeah.
One of the hardest diseases to detect, but we could have detected it. This person's got pancreas cancer.
And as long as you don't make that claim and say, well, we think you have it, now go and get the actual test. You don't.
Well, no. We could say we think you've got it.
Yeah.
Or the note to the doctors would be, we think this person's got pancreatic cancer. But the trouble is, it's such early stage that there's no other test that would pick it up. So they have to wait for it to grow. So I went to a US conference at the Cleveland Clinic in the United States, which was one of the big ones. You've got the Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic. And the Cleveland Clinic, we were talking there, and the one chap called Rex, fantastic lung doctor. And he was saying to me, he said, Yeah, you'd have to pick a size that we sort of then go with.
Yeah.
So if we wouldn't treat until it was 5 millimeters
Okay.
in width or something like that, but you'd already know that patient potentially could have lung cancer, so they then become monitored as they move forward through life because they're showing signs of it. So that was one way to go in under screening, which meant that we could also get bypass some of the US regulatory pathways as well, rather than going through this massive way. We could go under, I think it was called 520 or 512. I can't remember the way to do it. 512, 520K or something like that. And you would go through the back door by going, because America's medical system is all on codes.
Okay.
So you find a code from another device that's doing something, and you piggyback off that in order to get insurance codes, because it's always be insurance, everything has to be paid for in America, and that's how it would get in. But the other way to use it was veterinarian, to get research. Now, a lot of medical companies now are doing doing their products first in the vet field.
So for pets, for animals.
The reason why is because the vet field doesn't have too many devices, too many tests. They're still they haven't got all the latest tech.
Does that mean you need to divert your technology to be rather different?
Because what you get is the research from it. So if you could suddenly start detecting certain diseases, and you went through and a vet could use this, the problem was getting them to breathe, getting an animal to breathe, putting something on a horse's face or in a dog's mouth, but it could be that maybe when they were put under, that you could actually get the breath from them and then do a test. There was all ways to look at it, but I looked at that way as a potential. By penetrating the vet market for the first 2 or 3 years, the data from it would actually support moving into medical. But that is what a lot of startup medical companies have been doing over the last decade.
Interesting.
They start in the vet field with their product if they can, and then they move into the medical field because it's an easier pathway. You've got the research already showing, the tests are there. Then you move into medical trials in the UK.
It gives you more weight to...
But I was trying to find a way to not have to do the medical trials when we already knew the tech worked. Everyone knew the tech worked, but what you don't want to have is false positives. So you don't want to be treating someone for cancer, radiating them when they haven't got cancer. Yeah. So that's why I decided, the screening route would surely be the best route. If we can screen them and say, they may potentially have this, they could potentially have that, then the doctors then have a decision to move through. They share that with the patient. There's a possibility you may have something, but so early we can't detect it, but we want to keep an eye on it. So we come back every year and we'll monitor you. And if we see signs, then we'll take precautions.
And why not go down the route of medical trials? What's wrong with that?
It costs so much money.
Okay.
And takes so long. You see, so, it would be 5 to 7 years and it will cost millions to do it.
Okay.
And then you've got to get, that's per disease. Per disease. Now, bear in mind, we already know when I left the industry 5 years ago, we already knew 420 biomarkers.
Oh, wow.
Imagine how many there are now. Must be thousands now. Yeah. And certainly with AI now, AI is so advanced. This technology would work now. And I'm sure that there's better ways to do it. There are some, as I said, I haven't looked at what's happened to the competitor companies now, but there was one that was doing very well out there. But I didn't necessarily agree with their technology, so I won't mention. I still think it had flaws to it. But this is the type of thing. But this didn't come to market, and the human race should be saying, why has it not come to market? It's come to market because people with money didn't want it to come to market. Yeah,
that's the very sad and
it's
very
sick,
ugly part of pharma.
It's money.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense because I guess lots of people like to say that directors and CEOs have an obligation to their shareholders to bring the most amount of revenue and income, and that's why they do this. But I wish there was a stronger opposing power to push this forward. In Europe, why doesn't it come live in Europe? In the US, it makes sense because everything is so private that you just will maximize profit. But why not France, who have Sanofi and all the other big companies?
I mean, that is a difficult thing. I mean, there was interest from Europe at the time, but you're dealing with so many different medical systems in Europe as well. Yeah. And I think probably also you need to have that funding to go and start getting the funding. We got through millions. I think we raised 7.5-8 million.
Yeah.
But you're burning through. Scientists are not cheap.
Yeah. If you said
scientists
that just
are not cheap.
one disease
they're 50,000-70,000 £70,000 a scientist. And then the money burns very quickly.
And you also need to do it through a long time.
And you've got to bring prototypes. you make prototypes, and then you decide, oh, that needs a change, so you have to make another prototype, and then you have to double up on those prototypes, 2 prototypes. You have to make sure the technology is constantly working. It's such a, I think if I was a billionaire, and funny enough, I know a few billionaires, I remember talking to one of them and saying, well, surely you should be throwing your money at this, but they don't think they're ever going to die. That's the thing. They think they're walking on cloud 9, and then they're not going to die. And the reality is, what happened to me is, and this is one of the things that really drove me, actually. I'm going to throw a connection here.
Yeah.
I went for an eye test in 2018, and I started doing this. No, sorry, not 2018, 2015. And I'd started with this company in 2013, 2014. Mm-hmm. And it was the only company in a long time that I actually went back to being employed as opposed to being a founder or something.
Oh, really?
So all my companies for a long time now, for decades, have been my companies. Yeah. But this was the first time I went to a company because they wanted me, and it was awkward for me because I was dealing in a different way to what I would have done as a founder.
And it was an eye testing company or a
no,
technology
this
company?
Was the medical company.
Medical. It makes sense.
So what I'm getting to is that I went for an eye test, and when I had the eye test, the optician said to me, he pulled me to one side, he said, "Oh, what? Something's come up in your eye test." I said, "Oh yeah, what's that?" He said, "Have you got he said, "You need to speak to your doctor." He said, "I've identified there's a biomarker in your eye.
Oh, wow.
This is in your eye." He said, that shows, he said, "This is latest stuff." He said, "I've just been reading some medical papers on it." He said, "And I can see you've got something going on with your stomach. I think you should need to get it looked at." Now, bear in mind, I'd already been diagnosed with diverticular disease. I knew I had something with my stomach. He didn't know that.
Oh, wow.
And then I said to him, "Well, show me." And he showed it to me. He said, "Well, it's this here." I said, "Well, thank you very much." I said, "I'm actually CEO of a med tech company and we're doing breath, but this is really interesting." So then I learned about the eyes aspect of it. And before,
how can you see biomarkers in the eye?
There were biomarkers in the eye. There were signs to do with your veins and everything else in your eye that signal when you've got a disease or the way they perform. I don't know.
So it's not chemicals the same way how it is in liquids.
No.
It's just some kind of
this
pattern.
This is a physical pattern that must be there that creates these biomarkers, and it's not unique. That this has been looked at, and for me, this was really interesting because, when I left that company and before I was ill, I then went in and had a generative AI company from 2018 moving forward. So although I had the generative AI company when I was still CEO of the medical company, I left the medical company to concentrate on the AI business. But I also was looking as a sideline of launching a company that was going to do medical device detecting by eye, and using AI to do it. This was before ChatGPT and Gemini and all that was out there. And one of the things I was looking at, and I did speak to a billionaire actually about this, and we were discussing it. Never really went part. We had quite a few discussions about it. We probably could have gone, but we didn't. We went different routes. One of the ideas was we would use a smartphone to take photographs of your eye through an app.
Wow.
And that would then go through and start looking at the ways of detecting disease through your eye, through the biomarkers. So there are biomarkers, as I said, in existence for eyes as well.
That's so interesting.
Isn't it?
Wow.
So there's a lot of technology out there that will be coming down the line that may do this. And now AI is making such a change.
So you said your company that you've been working with.
Which one?
The one that, yeah, great. The one that tests breath for diseases. Yeah. You said that's not out on the market. No, that company went, I left that company within 2.5 years, 3 years after I left it. It went out of business. It ran out of money. And the technology, did somebody else pick up on it?
Well,
is anyone
I had a couple of shareholders that wanted to buy the technology. They were contacting me as the ex-CEO to help them try to get it from the liquidator, and it kind of was taken by someone mysteriously, and we don't know where that technology has ended up.
Right.
The patents were put. There's still some years left on the patents. They were taken, and I don't know who owns them. In
the medical industry, the patents are not for 100 years. They're for 20?
No. Yeah, there's something like that, 20, 25 years. Yeah. It's not for a long time. But they were taken, and the thing is, because we were also doing bomb detection and everything for the Ministry of Defence and chemistry stuff, we were looking at how you could detect effectively in the airports. That's another use of the technology, was to sniff the air in the airports and go. So, we also had a large operation in the United States. They were putting together a whole suite of detection stuff for the US government. So when they had events, they'd have everything from drones, spy cameras, and then they were going to have like these built into the walls you put up temporarily at events, and they were basically sniffers that were sniffing, and it was looking for chemical, nuclear and dirty bombs and everything else like that, or any bombs, and we could sniff it. So, we'd be able to pick it up in the air, just the molecules.
That technology would be a lot more useful in airports than those scanners, because those do nothing.
Exactly.
It just gives you the perception that...
So they were looking at that for a long time, and they were making a lot of headway, and they got it was the group company, the large company. I didn't have too much day-to-day involvement with it, apart from being on the board, but they were getting funded a lot of times through grants from the Ministry of Defence to do certain things, and there was a lot of work put towards it. But again, once Brexit happened, and suddenly the money dries up, and that caused a lot of promises to science just didn't happen, and suddenly we were at the cutting edge of technology, and the funding that you need is gone. That was something frustrating for me. You would have thought a lot of these cancer charities and other charities would have had a way for companies like us that had technologies looking for raise money, that they could have used their charity funding to help develop technology to stop these diseases.
Yeah, because most of these charities, they just help the patients treat usually terminal diseases.
They have a couple little awards here and there, but basically, if you're a commercial company, they do not fund you in any shape or form. Well, that's a major flaw in their business model, because they could take shares, or they could have some sort of loan payment or whatever else. But there was a way, there were startups, medical startups in this country that could, lung, heart charities, all these charities could support through funding, 250,000, 500,000, $1 million. I know, as a cancer survivor now, but I would rather, if money that I was given to cancer that was going to a company that may detect it earlier and save my life, than on treatment afterwards when I've got it and may not survive.
I guess the one thing that makes me think why that is the case is that it would be very easy to fraudulently spend that money.
That is, I think, one of the things.
5% of medical companies go under and not go. It's a huge percentage. You know better.
Why do they go under?
Of course.
A lot of it's because of funding.
But if you were in charge of a charity and you wanted some money in your pocket, you could invest into the companies selectively. And if they don't go on the market, well, that's normal. The statistics are there to support that you haven't made a bad decision.
Imagine you were, just an example, a lung cancer company, right? Lung cancer charity, and you invest in, say, the old company that I was in, and you invested in that company, and say that came to market.
Yeah.
Okay. And you had shares in that company because you decided that it was a massive benefit to lung cancer patients, and that you had said, well, you want lung cancer to be the primary one research done, and that was going to be done. And then that comes to market. That product, that company is now worth billions,
and you
have gotten so much from a 500,000, 250,000, $1 million initial investment. Yeah. You've now made 100 million out of it. That surely is more logical than, I see the arguments for it, but I think there needs to, when there's no money being supplied by governments and it's drying up and investors are not investing, then the ones who are hurting are the medical people that are struggling.
Absolutely.
And surely that's, we're going down another rabbit hole here. We're in the medical world. We've done UFOs.
Well, the medical industry is very interesting. That makes me just necessarily think that I guess government funding would be the only realistic way. But with such uncertain times like right now and all these wars breaking up, politicians are definitely directing their money on anything but medical sector.
But I think what the government should do in this country in January, which I think would be a very wise move, whether Wes Streeting becomes Prime Minister or someone else, is to look and say, okay, we want to generate a fund and we want to put it through the British Business Bank, but we want the British Business Bank to be giving the money to the businesses, not because the British Business Bank acts as an intermediary. It guarantees money at the moment for the banks to give you money, but you've got to meet the criteria of the banks, and that's not always easy as a startup because you're borrowing money, you're ramming your credit up and everything else, which makes you unattractive to a bank. And you can't necessarily raise the cash that you need through the bank at the early stages because you've maxed everything out and you've got a bad credit record. That's generally what happens with most entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So they don't give the money because you have to meet the bank's criteria because the bank are risking 20% maybe, 25%, and the government will guarantee 75%.
Yeah. Up to 2 million, is that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
But what would really be good was if the government turned around and said, well, actually, we want to use the British Business Bank exclusively for early stage funding up to 5 million or 10 million, and that from zero to that, and that we will give the money and it'll be this interest rate. We will review the business plans. We will individually meet the business owners. Like in the old days, we will discuss it, and their decisions will be made on that person and the business.
Yeah.
And we will support that. And if they were to do that, they would release innovation in this country. I mean, yes, there will be a lot of failures, but there'll be
fraud. I think again.
Well, again, not fraud if you do it properly. You know, if
you've got somebody in the government that makes that decision and he wants to make money and he makes that decision with a company that gives them some kind of cashback through some kind of a route, you have to find a way to stop that. There are ways to stop it, but you know, if you came to me and with an idea, you would have trouble now funding it unless you find business. You'd have to fund a bit yourself. We've discussed what your businesses are previously before we started. And, you know, if you wanted to grow that and beyond, you know, saying you want to become global, right?
You would struggle to do that. You'd have to either go out and beg and give away part of your company. Yeah. You'll struggle to get business loans for a certain amount of money. So, you know, what do? You know, you are struggling all the time. And I just think there has to be a rethink by the government at how do we restart the economy in the UK? Yeah. How do we support the startups? Because they may think they're doing the right things, but all they're doing is actually the bad things. In days before, you know, you came to the UK, we had a thing called the Small Loans Guarantee Scheme. Okay.
I've heard of that. Okay. Remind me what that is.
Well, what it was is very similar to what they do now with British Bank, but it was a little bit easier because everything's digital now. Yeah. Okay. That's the problem. It's a good thing and a bad thing. Because it means that people are no longer investing in the person or lending on a person. They're lending on figures. They're lending on credit record.
They just want to see that business plan and cash flow.
That is not what you want. What you want is a situation where you're lending for the person. You're listening to the person. You're saying they're really enthusiastic. I like that person. That person's going to be a success. I want to support it. Right? We as a bank want to support it. So small loan guarantee.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So I totally agree. And for example, like as an investor, investing myself, I really focus on the person who's behind it.
That's the way to do it.
But if you are making a system, how can you make sure that the person making the decision to bet on a person has any idea what kind of people to bet on? Does that make
well, that comes down to the old-fashioned bank manager.
Manager, okay.
The bank manager used to sit in the bank.
Yeah.
Right, when we had all branches everywhere, the bank manager would sit in the bank, and you would go to the bank manager. You'd have your business plan and your well, it's PowerPoint nowadays, but you'd have your business plan and you'd discuss your business and you'd tell them exactly what you want to do. And this is market research. They would go away and they would look at it and make a decision on what they believed you wanted.
Now, I like that actually.
Yeah. Now, the loan guarantee scheme was the way that they often did that. And that basically said in some cases it was 90% the government covered for. In other cases, depending on how much you got, it went down to 80%. But then they would look at it and say, well, this person wants £50,000, but the government are guaranteeing 90% of it.
Okay.
So we're only exposed to this percentage. Well, that's not a lot of money. And we think the company's going to make this amount of money anyway. Yeah. So I like the business. I think the business has a thing. I'll green light it, stamp it, boom. And it was that. And then you were done. Now, I raised as an entrepreneur in the 80s and 90s, even when I was working for other companies, I had companies on my own. I raised money for the loan guarantee scheme. And it was easy. Well, not easy. It was hard, but you built a rapport with a bank manager. And so much so, if you had a problem, you could go back and say, well, actually, how much more can I get under the loan guarantee scheme?
And do they help with that?
They were brilliant.
Oh, wow.
They were fantastic.
Great.
I mean, NatWest used to be the best for it. NatWest were really known for their support. You had Barclays were good for loan guarantee schemes as well. And that system is gone because they've got rid of the branch managers. They no longer exist.
Yeah.
They've made everything so digitalized that you actually made it too clean. And you've taken away the entrepreneurial aspect and the innovation and the risk aspect of building a business. An entrepreneur is a risk taker. He's often looking, he's not going to build, very rarely does an entrepreneur come up with the same idea of what someone else is always doing. They often come up with a slightly different view of it. Even your business has a slightly different take on it.
Yeah.
And so that is how you succeed. You find your hole in the market and you move forward. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you invent something that's different. Something about what you're doing is different. But a clean online system doesn't do that, does it?
No.
It looks A, B, and C. You know?
I really agree with you. And by the way, the reason I'm asking these maybe questions is because that's the same conclusion I came to. We are raising money through a bank, through this government scheme right now to open the second location. And we're quite successful at it because...
but it's been hard work, I guess.
You know, our books are very well managed, and the numbers are looking good. All the industry,
there's no reason for you. I mean, I know what you're doing. It's fantastic, and it's a good cash.
It works.
It's a cash cow, really. In many ways, it generates cash.
We reached out to 5 banks, and all 5 of them are giving an offer better one after another. Not the point.
Are you playing?
Absolutely.
Oh, you have to play the banks.
Yeah, we started with a 4.5% above the interest rate, above the government interest rate. Now we're down to 2.17 above the interest rate, with significantly less.
And are you using high street banks or online banks to do that?
So just high street banks. In your experience, online banks, are they
better?
Well,
there's many other avenues. Don't just stick to high street. Have a look at financial routes. There's lots of different ways to do that.
Interesting. First time I'm doing this, and I found...
well, I've raised 470 million now.
Wow.
Something like that.
Yeah, we need significantly less.
A lot of that's with airlines and stuff where you're raising big money. But I've raised it through investment and through banks as well. The hardest amount of money to raise is from 0 to sort of 1 or 2 million.
Oh, to which one is 2?
Yeah. It's really hard in the zone of sort of like 250,000 to 1 million. That is a terribly hard zone. And the UK
that's what we're in, actually.
Yeah, the UK used to have a really good on the equity side. Used to have a really good business angel network that was many different networks, but they were really progressive.
Because there are also tax benefits if you invest in a British business as an angel, is that right?
You get 2 things. One's a SEIS tax where the investor gets something like 55% back through tax over 3 years. So effectively, if they invest 10,000, they're actually investing 4.5 or 5 grand. And then there's the EIS system. So the SEIS, I believe, is £350,000 now. You have to qualify that, but what you do is you contact them and tell them your ideas. You fill out a few forms and everything else, and they come back and they say whether you're going to be suitable or not. So it's kind of like a pre letter. They send you a pre-letter that says yes, you're okay. You can tell investors that you got SEIS, and so when those investors invest, you give them SEIS certificates, which means that they can claim back. That's also a very good benefit for them as well. If the company fails. The investor can go back and actually can then reclaim also and get more money back. So, I think they end up, say out of 10,000 investment, and so the company fails, they end up only have invested something like 1,500.
Really?
Yeah, something like that.
Because the rest is in taxes and
and refunds and everything else. Yeah, if you're a good accountant can do this and a good expert in this field, it is very good. But
it is also a risky route to take, angel investing, because 80% of companies don't really. You should
only invest as a business angel if you have the money to do it. What tends to happen is, and this is the same with VCs as well, they tend to back 10 or 12 companies, and they only want 1 or 2 of those to succeed. Exactly. The rest will fail, but those 1 and 2 will make them all the money back and more of the ones that failed. But with business angels, you often find British business angels are only investing because, one, they've made a lot of money and they just want to give something back. And the other reason is they have to get rid of tax.
Because
and they can do this.
Otherwise, everything will just go.
They look for SEIS companies and EIS companies. They don't care what they are, and they just stuck their 10, 15, 25,000, 50,000 into them for so many shares and done. But I'll tell you a funny story. In my experience, the hardest investors are the ones that are investing £1,000 or £2,000. They ask all these questions. They come back. I've experienced it, and honestly, it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And then I get someone who wants to invest 100,000 or 50,000, and they're like, "Yeah, we like your company. Yeah, can you send me the form? Yeah, can you have your bank details?"
Sounds good.
It's done. It's done. It's done in like 3 days.
But I bet it's because
I always say it's because they can't afford it.
Yeah, I was.
And they can't really afford it, but they want to be into something, and so they put that £1,000 in.
I think if 1,000 is 2% of your net worth, and if 50,000 is 0.1% of your net worth, you're going to act differently because it's a much bigger portion and you can't afford it.
Yeah, I've seen that. I mean, we've had investment coming in. Well, if I take the previous company, the medical company had a lot of international investments coming in, more than UK. Mm-hmm. And with Pure One, we have investment going on at the moment, investment round and equity investment round, just a small round, not massive, but it's good. But we're seeing investment coming in from international rather than the UK. Mm-hmm. Very little from the UK.
International from which countries?
India, South Africa, and Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, wow. that are coming in. Yeah, and it's very interesting to see that, to be honest, how they're it does make you laugh because like the Indian ones, it's not the 25, 50,000, it's the 1,000 or 2,000 pounds, but they're not the ones that ask the questions. It's the British ones that ask the questions.
Yes.
And again, it's respect. I know that we had a £1,000 investment come in not so long ago, actually, very small, but we treat them the same. If someone's investing £1,000, we treat them the same as if they're investing $1 million.
That's nice.
Okay. We have an investors portal that we've built. And something for you to think about actually for your own websites. We have a little investors portal. Yeah, Pure One has it, and it's hidden away. And we give the URL to the investors once they've invested in the company. And what they get on there is different news, and more important news, what's going on. They get all the accounts each year, all the tax forms that we do, the plan that you have for the companies, everything's there. But it gives them a little bit of uniqueness. So you got these small little investors that feel they're talking to a PLC.
Yes.
Because, the amount of investors that I know that have come and have spoken to me and have said, wow, we've got this from a PLC, but we haven't got this even from some of the bigger investments we do. It's a great little hack to do.
Very nice.
I mean, I don't know what you build your websites in and everything else, but we use WordPress. And,
of course.
And WordPress has little password facilities that you can put. So you can get a web designer or yourself to design it very quickly and just use a different domain. So you could call it financial whatever your company name is .com. Just use a subdomain as that investor portal.
Very nice. And investors like it because it feels a little bit more like
personal.
Yeah, that's the word I had in mind.
And they're finding out information that the public aren't. So like we're just restructuring our company. We are changing the direction a little bit of Pure One, and that information very shortly going on to the main investor portal, so they will understand exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the things, as the public won't know all that. So
tell me more about Pure One. I'm very curious about this. So it's a new company that you started, and you are growing this.
The company's been around for 7 years in many different forms. Okay. Because I used it as a consultancy company, and it did a lot of different sort of consultancy work, but it's now turned into a travel, leisure, and media company, effectively.
Wow. And I've read your article about how to open a travel agency in the UK, and you wrote it 3 years ago.
Cool, that's a long time
ago. And I really like it. It was written. It was using all these analogies with I can't remember the specifics, but you mentioned there that it's a very good idea to pick a niche, which I think is a great idea for any business.
It's crucial.
So who are you targeting is my question. Who are you targeting? Is it
Well, first of all, we're going for a certain age group. So that's the first part of the niche. And then the second thing is we're looking more for people who are looking for not hardcore adventures, but looking for exclusivity and sort of experiences. We are experienced lifestyle company. Effectively, that's what we're aiming to be. And so our niches are very much aimed towards that, an experience. We've identified that there's a lot of people that no longer want to go and spend 7, 10, 14 nights laying on a beach and cooking. So you turn them over every half an hour, so they get a tan. We've found that yes, they might want to spend a few days doing that, but they actually want to go around and see things and experience cooking with locals and having local dishes and cultural stuff. So that's where there's a hole in the market for us. And we've got little niches within it, you see.
And if you're mainly doing the travel via coach and train, are most destinations within Europe?
Well, that's interesting to see because we're a global company. So, we will be having stuff in South America and across the United States and stuff as well. So catering for that, and the same for Asia.
Yeah.
But if we look at where we are today, we still have a lot of flight programs within our thing, but we don't provide the flights on our packages because we have customers, you don't make money on flights anyway as an operator, but it is such a cutthroat industry. And everyone wants to fly on different things, so what we do is we make sure all the transfers are provided. When they arrive, that's when their holiday starts. So,
I like that. That's what I like
so you
to
can
do.
go, if you want to travel first class, you can. If you want to travel on a budget airline, you can.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah,
that's very
good. So we don't restrict that, and that's the beauty of it. It allows people to book from all over the world as well, and so we're not restricted on that aspect. But the way we're going with the coach side of things, people will still be able to we still have our places where people can fly to, but we just want to gradually take control of the transportation a little bit more and remove people from the skies. But that's a long process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a slow process.
Do you yourself travel a lot?
I used to before I was ill. I did. I was doing 500,000 miles a year.
500,000 miles?
Yeah, at one point. I tell you, I was flying back and forth across the Atlantic so many times.
How many times around the globe is that? It's what?
A lot of times.
15 times?
I don't know.
Wow.
I haven't even thought that. I used to get on the plane, and I knew the pilots, and I knew every
really?
cabin crew.
How do you get to know? This is very interesting. How do you get to know the pilots, even if you travel much?
Because I was traveling business and first class.
Yeah.
I'd get on when they were like the cabin doors were still open, and they'd come out and speak to you. And they, and because they sleep sometimes on the flight, they would come down and they'd recognise you as the same person they'd seen for the last 2 months in that same seat. No. And I'd have my same seat, so I'd always try to get the same seat or one or two seats. So I always had that. But I used to get on the plane at Heathrow or wherever it was in the US, and they used to say, "Oh, hi, Wesley." It wasn't Mr. Baker, so Wesley. "Oh, your drink's waiting for you." I'd have a Bailey's and ice waiting, or something, or brandy and water waiting for me, and a little note from the flight crew, "Oh, please you back," and all this stuff.
Funny. Yeah. Bailey's is also my favorite drink. We only have it at the spa because I like it.
Yeah. What, the Bailey's?
Bailey's, yeah.
Yeah. It's nice. So that was going on, and then I got so bored of flying the same routes at one point. So I started to say, well, okay, I want to fly different aircraft. Okay. And I want to fly different airlines. Well, what I should have done was start doing all these vlogs. You get all these vloggers that are doing all, because I could have made so many, but I didn't. And then, so I started flying all the different airlines across the Atlantic. And I was picking different airports to fly to: Chicago, Detroit, Toronto, Montreal.
And were you mostly traveling because of work, or was that
because of all the medical stuff I was doing at the time? But that's before I got the apartments. I actually got an apartment out there, and that's because it became impossible. I was killing myself, physically killing myself, going back and forth.
Oh, cool.
I didn't know where I was coming and going. So got to a point where I wanted to. When I got the apartment, I had my clothing there, and I furnished it and everything, and I had a different life. That was the beauty of it. So I was stepping into, it was like one of these James Bond movies. I was stepping into a totally different life. I used to come off, when my wife first came, she found I had new friends and everything else there. And she was, "You have a better life over there than you do here," and that's what it was like. I did have more friends over there than I did in the UK. And the interesting thing was, when I got to that point, I was flying so much that obviously I had all my clothes in the apartment. So I used to travel with no bag at all.
Nice.
Well, that used to query everyone in the airport. Why has he not got any bags? For a while they queried it, and after a while they got used to it. But I then used to time myself how quickly I could get off the plane through to the rental car, particularly in Minneapolis.
20 minutes.
Well, listen to this. My record in Minneapolis was landing, and because I had global entry, which meant that I didn't even have to go by the security man anymore. I just went to a machine, and it boom, boom, and I was in. I left the plane through global entry. My car was waiting. My rental car was waiting 12 minutes from the plane.
Wow.
Now, normally my journey was, with traffic and everything, would take 20 minutes just from the apartment to the airport. But one particular day I arrived, and it was a clear route. It took me 12 minutes from the plane to my apartment. And I walked in, and my friends were in my apartment putting food. They'd cooked me, that's why I say Minnesota nice. They'd cooked me food. And the food was sitting in the apartment waiting, and I'd arrive, and they'd be like, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here for another 45 minutes." And I said,
"Wow, this is a dream come true." Efficiency at its best.
London Heathrow, my record was 11 minutes, just over 11 minutes from plane through all security out, and the driver waiting for me to take me home.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it just adds this like extra, it's always like the last mile that's the most difficult with travel.
When you go and you see that queue and you think, why is that? Of course, these electronic gates now make that a lot easier.
Yeah, it's not too, especially at Heathrow. It's actually pretty good.
The whole thing's becoming easier across Europe as well now. So it will become, but that's certainly the way to travel. And it's enjoyable. And I like traveling like that now. I really...
What about for leisure? Any destinations that you've visited that... maybe inspired you to do the travel agency, or just that you personally really liked?
Okay. Well, you have to go back as to how did I start in travel, which is a long story, and we would take too long in this podcast to do it. So you'd have to have me back for another
I'd love to have you back and we can talk about this, yes.
But long story short, my love of travel came, first of all, I was traveling a bit in the UK with my parents in the 1980s. Yeah. No one really traveled. In the early 1980s, people weren't traveling too many times internationally. And it was only for the wealthier at that point.
Lobster on plane and all that stuff.
Yeah. So eventually the package holidays were really gaining momentum, and the golden years happened in the mid-1980s. And what happened was my parents booked their first overseas holiday. I was used to going to France because I lived near France anyway, down in Kent. We were hopping over on day trips with the school trips and everything. To 2 or 3 times a year you'd go to France. So that was normal. But this was my first proper trip, and it was a holiday, and they came home and they said, we booked 7 nights to Lorette de Mar and the Costa Brava. And we went down on plane with Cosmos Holidays, that was actually. And so that was my first holiday, and that holiday was what started my life in travel. Because I realised I wanted to work in travel, and the whole world opened up. But there was other things connected to this story. Because of living on my coastal town, we had international students from Spain, France, Germany, Italy and Portugal that would come in from Europe, and they'd come for 2 weeks at a time and stay with families in the town. Yeah. And they would learn English and everything else, like homestays. But they'd go to the youth club, and we had and I used to go to the youth club, and we all did in those days to play football. And the girls would come and the boys would come. We'd have international football, like World Cup going on a little 5-a-side pitch outside.
Gorgeous.
So every year, every 2 weeks, we'd have a different country, to play. It'd be German, or who's coming? Is it Italians next time? So we'd have this World Cup football going on, but we'd also have these international girls, which were far more mature for their age than the British equivalent. And
is that because they're traveling, or is it
just
where
because
they're from?
Of the cultural differences in Europe, I think, and they were mature in their outlook on things.
Because I find people that travel are like always 5 years older than people that don't.
But that's probably very good observation. I hadn't thought of it like that. But they were certainly, really, really more advanced in their life, shall I say, and they looked beautiful, and they were tanned often and everything. Oh, yes. And suddenly, so for a young man growing up on the coastal town, it became, it was like picking fruit, really. We enjoyed it. They loved a little bit of romance. And of course, after they went back, you stay pen friends with them. And then in time, I've still got a couple of those as friends, that were girlfriends at one point when I was, 13, 14, and they've become friends. But, that all added to it. So I had this international flair. Something else as well that's unique. I used to have an old radio, and I used to lay in the bath, and I used to tune the radio. You'd have your medium wave, which we would pick up some French channels just across and long wave, but I would listen to the international channels across in France and Belgium because they were coming across.
And you can catch them.
We could catch them where I was. And sometimes if it was right, you put your area up, you'd catch them. We had a big long area we pull up, and I'd sit in the bath listening to French music and listening to talk. So I was always, that's one of the advantages, I guess, living right close to the continent, in that we do feel in certain parts of Kent where we are, that we are more continental than perhaps the rest of the UK in many ways. In fact, there's a big joke now because our climate has changed so much over the last 50 years, and I've seen it change. We have such warm summers down in Kent, and dry summers as well, that we actually call it Costa del Kent now, as opposed to just Kent. So the locals say, I thought
you were going to say about the wine. They say that.
Oh, wine. We have so many vineyards. I remember the first vineyard and people were like poo-hooing it. And I've actually watched these vineyards, and I go on vineyards walks quite a lot. We have some amazing wine, and the wine quality that's being produced in Kent now is the same or better than some of the wine that was produced in southern France. And the reason why is the climate has changed, and the climate in Kent now is matching that original climate down in France.
Exactly.
And so we've got some incredible wines.
If you want like the Bordeaux from the 90s right now, you need to look at South England.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've got couple vineyards that I go to is Biddenden. Do you know Biddenden?
I'm afraid I don't know.
Biddenden wine and Chapel House is another one, I think. But there's loads. I mean, Canterbury's got a couple now. Canterbury had no vineyards before. Now it's got 3 or 4 around the edge of it. You drive down there's some road going between Canterbury and Chilham, the village of Chilham, and along the right-hand side, it's all vineyards.
So did I understand correctly that when you made this trip, you said like in your teens, you were like 13, 15?
But my original trip to Spain. Yeah. It was my first.
And did you say you opened your first company around the same age as well?
Yeah, I had a little software company, yeah.
And was that related to travel or?
No. That was I was writing computer games.
Computer games? Oh, nice.
Yeah. This is on the old BBC Micro and Acorn Electron. And you had to set it ZX Spectrum, but I didn't use that computer. I used the Acorn Electron and BBC Micro. And I used to write games on that, and you had a little data recorder, and you'd go down and get a cassette. You buy a pack of cassettes in Woolworths or down in local Gatefield Sounds. That was another record shop, and you buy these. You put it in the data recorder, and you press the thing, and it would go. And that was the game on it. You'd write the game, and then you'd have photocopies of I'd go down to the library and take photocopies of a design for the cover, and then I'd cut them out and put them into the sleeve, and then the money would come in the post. I'd put and put it out, put a little advert in the magazines, because the magazines came out monthly, and you'd have your little advert in such and such a game.
And you'd sell them through advertisements on magazines.
Yeah. And people would send £1, £5, depends what they were, and then you'd just send them out. I remember my mum, because in those days we had pound notes, not coins.
Yep.
Yeah? And my mum walked in my room one day, and she knew I was up to things. I was always going to the post office. So she knew I was selling things, but she didn't know what level at that point. And she walked in, and I had a stack of pound notes like this, right? And I was like counting them like an accountant or bank manager. And she said, "What have you stolen? What have you done?" She actually thought I would. I've been doing all this like mysterious illegal traffic or whatever, but are you dealing drugs? Are you dealing glue? Because people were glue sniffing those days. People used to
glue sniffing.
Yeah. They used to get a bag, and they'd get chemical glues. They'd pull it in, and they put them in, and then they'd go down to the beach and sit in the beach huts, and
that makes you high,
and they would go all high. Yeah, and everyone knew about the glue sniffers because you could see them. They were always spaced out, and you'd see these bags. Of course, that doesn't go on in my town now. You even mentioned glue sniffing, they all look, "What's that?" You just said it. What's that?
Yeah.
But that was the thing. People didn't afford drugs. They had glue sniffing, so they'd go to the hardware store to buy glue, and they'd literally put it in a bag and sniff it. Yeah.
I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And I can't imagine selling anything through a magazine now,
Yeah.
Just the thought of putting an ad and actually
and the money
monetizing
would come in
it.
just in an envelope,
Wow.
I mean.
Just send it by post.
Yeah. I used to send, when I had girlfriends overseas, and I was in my teens, I used to send money to them, because I made money, I was a rich teenager. I used to send them, get some money converted for them, or they wanted sterling, send it. But I used to put it around carbon paper.
So that they don't.
So any thieves or anything, they couldn't scan it. So they scan it, They don't see carbon. See?
Did you get any?
You know what carbon paper is? The double printed paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, nothing was ever stolen.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So you think about it now, all this money was going back and forth. Yeah, and then some companies, a big US company approached me, contacted me, and said, in letter. In those days, it was all by letter. They wrote a letter and said, "We'd be interested in buying you this game or that game," And so I ended up selling the games.
Like the rights to it?
I gave them the code. Boom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Give them the code, and that was it. Game gone. You signed it away.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so. How old were you when you started?
13.
That is
12,
so
13,
cool.
Yeah. 13, 14. I started coding when I was sort of about 12, 10, 11, 12, that age. Yeah.
That is so cool.
And your coding, you didn't have a PC screen. You had your TV.
Yeah.
So you
really?
Yeah.
You got on TV.
You plugged it into your TV.
So like with an HDMI, but it was
it wasn't HDMI. It was an aerial cable.
Red, yellow.
No, it was an aerial cable. You had an aerial cable that came out of the TV, went in there. Then you had different color coding things that went into your data recorder, that was for the different sounds, for the different, microphone and audio and all that sort of stuff.
I am not familiar with that technology.
Yeah. In fact, I found my old data recorder in my parents' loft last year. I was up there and I found it and I went, oh my God, it was an old Sanyo, that was the brand, Sanyo. And I thought, oh, well, I made a lot of money with that. My kids are looking and said, what is it? I said, that is technology.
This is impressive that, I guess it doesn't count as an exit because you can continue making more games, but I stopped the closest to
technology moved forward and people, and I moved and I got jobs and I went into travel. So I stopped doing that. And I started playing games rather than writing them so much. The other thing is, at school we used to, I could tell you some amazing stories. Got to be careful for liability here. But we had a situation where we used to hack in those days because this is, you're probably familiar with an old film called War Games.
Yeah.
Well, that film hadn't come out when we was doing all this at that point. And so people really didn't understand. So modems and phone numbers, you were just like boom, boom, dialing in, and you could dial into literally the waterworks, the telephones, the airlines. They all had connections with modems. Okay. So if you had access to, and you find out what it was easy to do it.
You could just listen in on the...
No, we just go in and you go into their computer system and you start doing things, changing bills for people, making, and let's just say, and I'm not saying it was anything to do with
Hypothetically
speaking, a few people got quite a few around the world trips or trips to Madrid with all the accommodation paid and everything done. And they went on them because we used to get the phone book and people had phone books in those days and they were this big with everyone, unless you're ex-directory, it was all in there and hardly anyone was ex-directory in those days. And you went through the phone book, you found the address. Oh, it's Mr. Smith. Oh, yeah, okay. He's had a hard time, and we'd book him a trip to south of France for a week, and then you'd suddenly realise Mr. Smith had gone on this trip because he'd get delivered to his door the tickets. Wow. And in those days, the airline tickets were handwritten. Yeah, yeah. It's a bit like Catch Me As You Can movie.
Yes,
yeah, very similar type of thing was going on, and so all that went on, and then of course the War Games movie came out, and rightly so, people then started to take security. Starting to think, oh my God, anyone could dial into the government here and fire nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Well, that was a possibility. And in those days, if you were clever enough, so.
They still have these dial books in Sweden.
Yeah, do they?
Yeah, they still, by law, everybody has, I think it's their name, surname, address, and occupation in these books, which you can...
Wow, that's really interesting. Interesting. We used to, some other. I could share so many. I was just thinking it's going out my head now, but I was thinking of another story to tell you that was.
Sorry, I interrupted you mid-speech.
You did, and you lost a good one because it was a good one, and it would have to come back another time.
Well, we'll talk about Catch Me If You Can and the security around it.
Jig it, it's gone. It was a good one to do with. I know. Yes, it has come back. See, at school, we kind of got told off a little bit, but they couldn't prove it. So there was only 4 of us who were capable in the computer club of doing it. And I'm not going to say it was us that did it, but there were, certainly I remember there were 4 individuals that did this, and they dialed into another school 15 miles away that we didn't like because we used to play sports against them. And we went into what we had O-level and CSE was the qualifications over here then, not the GCSE, and it was O-level, wasn't it? And we may have gone into their computer work, and there was a game that someone had this game where there was a hand waving like this. We turned them around, so they were like that, and which wasn't a very nice thing. And they couldn't trace very well, but they worked out it must have come from one of the local schools and using the police.
That other school.
They kind of eventually got in touch with our school and our science or computer teacher and the headmaster and all that. And they called up, he said to the teacher, well, who's capable of doing it? And they said, well, these 4 here, which I know, so I'm not saying I'm one of them. We were marched into the thing and they looked at us and the policeman's there, it's all big stuff. But they couldn't trace in those days the phone call, in the same way, because there's no trace record, no IP in those days in that way. And so they kind of said, well, did you go in and do this? And I said,
no,
we haven't done it. when did this happen?
It must be such a pain for the police to
would have been in
figure
those
out
days,
because
well, there's nothing they could do.
No.
There was no evidence. Only evidence was what happened, but there was no like that school definitely did it. And those, all they knew is it happened after school time, and we had our computer club after school.
You're just staring at these 4 teenagers and saying, did you do it?
Yeah.
Nope.
And of course, the next year, War Games came out. And I remember our computer teacher, I won't say his name because it all cause problems, but I remember him looking at us and he was sort of, have you seen that film, lads? Yeah. It's good, isn't it? He said, yeah.
Are you still like a techie individual?
Yeah, I mean, I am. I had an AI company, as I said, 2018 to 2023, 2022 really. I am, but I'm starting to feel it a bit now. Okay, my son is fantastic on computers now, self-taught. I'm self-taught. No one ever taught me anything. He's self-taught. He's very fast on it. He says he's the whiz kid. But he came and whenever anything goes wrong, he still comes to Dad. And
nice.
Dad still knows the way to do it, and I still do things and enjoy it. A few years ago, I remember someone was trying to hack into his computer and everything, and I countered it, and I was having fun playing with them, and eventually I actually reversed that situation. Where we went back into theirs.
Have you ever seen those videos on YouTube where like people hack into these hackers and they prank?
Fantastic. So funny. But that's what I was doing to it. And I'm just closing up. But I still have that ability. But shall I say now, since my illness, and also COVID. When I had COVID, I got long COVID afterwards, and I had brain fog, really bad. I actually went through the NHS system, and they're still working out what it all is and everything. But for certainly 2 or 3 years, I had a brain fog. And it's only since I've been really ill that I would say my brain fog has probably gone quite substantially, actually. It has gone. But I did have, my business partner, he would see it happen. I would say to him, I'd be in a meeting and I'd signal to him, and he knew I basically lost the meeting. I'd forgotten what we were there for. I had this brain fog, and it was a horrible thing because I really thought I was losing it. I could be really firing on all levels. Yeah. And I tell you what I have noticed, and this is an age thing, is that I used to be I could do in one day what most people couldn't do in 1 month. Mm-hmm. I can no longer do that. That's definite. I cannot multitask like I did. I still can a little bit on, I could handle 2 or 3 things now going on and be clear about them.
And is it the multitasking aspect of it, or how do you measure that?
It's the multitasking. I feel, and things worry me a lot more than what they used to. So I will feel a little bit more worried about things than I was more gung-ho, and I'm a little bit more conservative on things.
Have you ever read the book Beginner's Mind, Zen Mind?
No.
It's just very on topic of what you're saying. The idea there is that a beginner sees lots of opportunities, and the expert sees a lot of. It was much better well said, but the expert sees a lot of issues with the ways you can get to a place. In other words, like somebody who's just starting in business sees 8 ways to get to the destination, and the expert sees how every one of these 8 ways is flawed. While the truth is somewhere in the middle. Actually, it's like maybe 2 or so are opportunities.
I can believe that.
Sounds like
it's very similar. What I'm going through now is that, but it's also a fact of doing things, the physicality of doing things. I'm finding I'm not as productive as I once was. But then it's very interesting. Someone said to me a few months back, they said, Wes, you need to slow down. You need to work at the pace of everyone else. Okay. So I did. Maxim, I'm going to tell you now. All these people have been lazy all my life, and I never realised, because I went back to the speed that everyone else worked at, not doing stuff, not doing this, taking a week to do something that could be done in a day, and all this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, am I the mug? Because I've run myself sick. Made myself sick.
I was going to say, you just recovered from something very difficult. You should cut yourself some slack on the productivity aspect.
But do you understand what I'm saying? I went back to the speed of everyone else. I thought, it's amazing that even people can work like that. And no wonder people are walking away. When people say, I know someone and they were saying, "Oh, I'm stressed," and I thought, "You do a 9 to 5 job. Your job's really easy. How can you be stressed doing that? You do it 5 days a week."
People confuse stress with anxiety, and anxiety
maybe.
comes from a feeling of uncertainty.
Yeah.
But that's not stress. It's a bit of a different line.
Watching too much news and getting depressed.
Exactly.
I mean, I said to my mother, she was the same. She's waffling on the other day. She was, "Oh, there's the news there." I said, "Switch it all off. Don't watch it. Go back and visit it once a day for 1 hour and get an update." I use a number of apps to use, and one of them is Grounded News. Have you heard that?
I have not known. I'm off all social media, off all news.
Do you know, it's funny you should say that. You're off of social media, yeah?
I don't have anything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you something. That is the next step for me.
Yeah.
I've made a decision that 2027, personally, I'm stepping back. Now, I've got thousands of followers on many different social medias, but I cannot maintain it. And the influx of junk that comes in.
You should hire a person that does it and just not touch it. Get a report once a month on how it's doing, and
I like to see what's going on. That's the thing. But then, but then that's why I went to this Ground News app, because it gave you a neutral. Whether they left, you got like this. You pay for to upgrade to get the better benefits, but you get a panel at the bottom that is one color for if it's left swinging, one color for center, and one color right. So you got all these news stories coming in, and you can see whether they're right wing or left wing or center.
Oh, that's really nice.
And you can see them all around the world, so you can actually work out what sort of news you want to watch.
I think I've seen that. I think it was
quite a few influencers say it on YouTube and promote it, but I'm not making a pitch on it. I'm just saying that I use that to get a global look at things and also a regional look. But it's good to see all the different versions of it, and I click through it. And I do that now for half an hour a day. But one thing I'm trying to get back to, which was to leave my phone away from my bed. The trouble is I use the phone to listen to music when I go to sleep because the wife snores too much. But the reality is I need to get away from the phone being near the bed, and I need to switch off. And I know some people that literally leave their phone downstairs. For at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, it's not switched off, but it's just sitting there charging.
I've heard that suggestion a lot of times. I can't do it, but it's a good idea.
I did do it for a while, and it did work.
Yeah.
But I do find sometimes, the trouble is you get your tablet out then, and I get my tablet, and I'm still getting everything on my tablet.
Yeah.
So but I don't know how you're living without social media, but I'm very envious of you.
I left 6 years ago, and I just felt happier.
So is that every single social media?
I have WhatsApp. That's it.
Wow.
No, nothing. It's a bit funny. My partner, we've been dating for 7 years. We hit 7 years on Monday, actually.
Wow.
And
don't get the 7-year itch.
She told me about it. I didn't know what that
only
was.
Marriage. I mean, you're not married, so you won't have it, hopefully. But this 7-year itch, yes.
For those that don't know, it's apparently like when you How do you describe it?
It's when partners decide that they are finding other fruit, low-hanging fruit nearby, and they wish to pursue that fruit for a little bit of fun.
And this is a perfect example because I had no idea what it was, and Joya was saying, she was explaining it to me, and it happens. I definitely feel like I'm missing out on a very large part of what other people know, but I'm also missing out on a lot of stress and junk and all the other stuff that is unnecessary. Like
you're a very relaxed guy.
I run a spa business, right? It's my
but you're very relaxed. Your demeanor and everything about you is very relaxed. That's why we've enjoyed talking. That's why we've spoken for so long.
Very much.
The point is that has to become because you're actually living in an age before social media. Now
I see where
that is a wonderful place to be. Social media is fantastic, but really, is it fantastic?
The only thing that people say, because I'm trying to push this get off social media agenda onto everybody, which I shouldn't do. It's toxic.
No, you should.
I think it's a net positive. They say, well, how am I going to keep up with all of my friends? But I think that the people that...
Got group chat on WhatsApp if you want it.
And I think the people that really matter, at least like in my life and lots of people I know, we send each other messages occasionally. But the people that you just stare at their breakfast that they post on their stories, they're not your real friends.
What they're having for breakfast, what they're having for lunch.
And there's a magic to when you meet a person and you don't know what's been going on for the last 2 weeks.
Because you've got something to talk about.
And that emotion is fresh. They tell you, I've been to Mallorca. And you're like, oh my God, that's incredible. But if you've already seen that they've been there, and you're like, oh yeah, I've seen, how was it? Completely different.
You're going back to the time that I grew up in, you see.
Yeah.
And the reality is, when I said to my kids, they said, well, how did you get hold of anyone? I said, well, we walked to their house
Yeah.
and saw if they wanted to come and play.
Yeah.
Right? They wanted to what? Go out and play. Oh, and how did you phone them? Well, we phoned them. Well, how'd you get the number? Well, we knew the number off by heart in your head.
That's magical.
Right?
I can't
I can still
how
remember.
people, really.
I can remember my grandma's old number. She's been dead since 2012, but it was 01227.
Well, don't say it on air.
I can't come out and remember it, but I can remember all of the numbers. Or that someone else has that number now, so let's just get a load of phone calls. But yeah, I can remember all my old school friends' phone numbers. Yeah, you remember your phone numbers. You can give them a call, and that's how you That's how
I think
life
you'd enjoy
was.
being off social media. I think it's it just takes a lot.
It takes a lot of energy, doesn't it?
And if you ever come home from doing groceries,
Yeah.
and you unpack all the stuff, you put them in the fridge, you sit down and you take out your phone and you realize there's nothing on your phone to entertain you.
Yeah.
You just sit down on the couch and you go, oh wait, usually that's the time I go on, and then every social media under the umbrella.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I've actually have the next hour and I'm not going to kill it on doom scrolling or watching the news or just seeing what article the algorithm throws my way. I can be a bit more intentional with my time. It's a beautiful realization. Everyone definitely comes to it.
Do you still have the accounts and then managed by someone else for your business or anything like that?
Well, I'm in a lucky position that I don't necessarily need to grow my network if I don't want to. My business is self-reliant. I don't have any investors in it. The public image I'm growing on this podcast is isolated to it.
Yes.
And if I wanted to have an Instagram account, then I would hire them. But no, I don't have.
So this just grows organically, basically.
Well, so the podcast is in its own world. We have different campaigns on how we're going to grow it. It's also quite fresh, but it's business. I wouldn't go to.
That's done by someone else anyway. It's not you.
You I take part in it.
Yeah.
And I make
you contribute
decisions
a little bit and say, well, we want to increase on Facebook or we want to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you don't physically have your own.
No. I don't respond to messages. I don't see.
The thing for me is, how do I step back from something like that? I'm an author.
Yeah, of course.
So people want that personal connection with me, but and I've created author separate ones to my personal ones, but there is a bit of trouble. A lot of people try contacting me directly on my personal one, and I'm trying to edge them towards my private. You can follow me on Facebook there. You're not friending me. I don't know who the hell you are. He was a perfect mass murderer or something. Don't want you knowing everything about my life. But the reality is, I've got to look at to do that. But I do want to do, because I think social media is causing a lot of society's problems.
I do think so too.
I think it's exploded. It's uncontrollable, and buffoons, and I say that in the derogative manner it's meant to be, buffoons are controlling people's opinions with ridiculous materials that is all fake, and it's getting published and there's no control over it.
And I think people will really come to it, but just I think we're right, but early in it.
Yeah.
It's going to be all obvious.
Is this a case of does government really? Are we getting to a point where we're a nanny state where government really has to step in and say, right, there is going to be no more Twitter, there's going to be no more Blue Sky, there's going to be no more Facebook?
I don't
is
think
that something that needs to happen?
I think that people will just eventually come to that conclusion because it's so apparent and obvious. You look on different social media and they support different, and the algorithm you get is pro or against different parties, depending on whether it's owned by the Chinese, by Elon Musk, or by US. It's quite obvious, I think.
It's scary that one person, so for example, Elon Musk, he decides he's not getting his message across, so he goes and buys the company doing it. And then controls it and basically destroys it. And, although the founders of Twitter, one of the founders launched Blue Sky, which was quite crafty, sold Twitter, but still had the coding of another equivalent of the early Twitter days. And he launched Blue Sky. I believe that's how it worked. And so I signed up Blue Sky and got, what I wanted. And there's been quite a gentle drift to that. But it's really comforting to actually speak to someone who's actually done it.
You earlier mentioned like how you step away from it. I've done it. I've not done it. I've not had an account I had to step away from in the same manner that you do. One thing that comes to my mind, and again, it's just a couple off the top of my head right now, is maybe separating do you work from an office or do you have a dedicated space where...
I have a dedicated space as well, yeah.
So maybe for example, I don't answer emails in bed. Trying to make a
I'll
point.
do mine in my bath.
That is fine. But I think that a space where I sleep, I try not to
People
eat there.
get emails from me
there.
at 1 and 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. They're like, what is this guy doing? It's because I've woken up and I think, I need to do that email. And they're like, but it makes the impression that I'm working all the time. You see, everyone thinks I work 24/7. I don't. I just happen to have woken up at that time and need to send an email.
That's very. I had a friend, and I'll get back to what I wanted to say. Who would schedule send emails?
Oh, I've done that as well,
to me at like 7:30 p.m.
Yeah.
To make the impression that he's still in the office, and then he secretly told me on the pod, I finished my day at 2 o'clock.
I've done that at all different times. I did do that for a while. But
what I wanted to say is maybe it's possible to separate and treat it the same way that you wouldn't write a book or dedicate time to creating a chapter when you're not in the space that you're writing in. Maybe isolating social media to a certain time and place. Because one of the things
I am finding difficult now is that I've got a lot of writing to do that I want to do, because I've also got public production companies contacted me asking me for scripts for a couple of my travel memoirs they want to write into either a film or a TV series.
Really? That is so exciting.
I've had another one wanting to run is talking to me potentially about for one of the national television stations to run create a program on us building the travel company moving forward. So that's in discussion. So, but I do think I've got too much of an overload of social media, and I feel now in my 50s that I want to step away a little bit. I don't want to lose touch, because things like Facebook, I'm on certain Facebook groups that have been really good for me mentally, as well as just to talk to old friends and colleagues and people in my industries. But I think I'd miss that if I stepped away totally from that. But also at the same time,
there's definitely a price and a sacrifice to it.
Yeah. Do you know what someone accused me of last week? Last week, end of last week. It really upset me. I was very upset about it. On a particular Facebook group that I belong to. Yeah. And two people, they didn't agree with what I was saying. They were basically putting a nasty right-wing agenda on a website, on a group that we just talk about travel related, all people that used to work overseas. And, quite a few people were saying, look, this isn't the right site for this. We don't want your toxic stuff on here. We're a happy site, a happy group. And I wrote something else, and then they attacked me personally. One of them accused me of AI in my books. And another one says, no one can produce 5 books in a year. Well, I did. Yeah. And there was no AI involved. And one of my friends on the group replied to them and said, you know what? If you read damn books, you'd see there's no AI could produce all the stories that he's come up with and he's got in there and he's done. He said, that is him living his life. You're just so jealous. You can't. Yeah. But the hatred of these keyboard warriors. Yeah. And I thought that was the first time in all my years online, and I've been online since 1993, 94 was when I first connected on the internet. That's before most people even knew about the internet. And I've been, I've had websites from the .com era and everything. And really, that's the first time I've had any form of little bit of bullying. And I thought, well, you're challenging my professionalism and everything. And you're just sitting on a keyboard being a...
I bet none of these people will be able to say that to you to your face.
No, they wouldn't.
It's so interesting how it's cars and behind a screen that you feel you're protected because you're in that little bubble.
Because I know where they are now, because we've been finding out my book agents sort of saying, well, look, some of this was liable and we took screenshots before we got it removed and everything. And I said, well, it could have damaged your brand and it's liable. And I said, we want to do something about it. And I said, well, I'm not so sure. And I said, yeah, we want to do something, even if it's just a legal letter to warn them that you were liable. Yep. You lied.
I like sending...
No fact. I don't mind sending letters. Yeah. That's another thing I do all the time. And that's a bit of business advice, actually, to your listeners. Anyone who's one of the best things to do now, I find, is go back and write a letter to someone, physical letter, and put it in the post. I do that an awful lot now if I want to open a door up somewhere, because no one gets letters anymore. And suddenly you get a letter on your desk. It's like, wow. And you open it up and you read it. Oh, yeah. And then you're in contact with that person. Right? I do it a lot.
That's a good idea.
I've told a lot of people in all the different business networks, it opens up so many doors for me in the last 2 or 3 years. I've been able to open doors just by writing letters instead of emails. Emails get put into spam, get junk, or they've received 50 emails and yours is no different to all of them. They receive a letter, the likelihood of having had a letter for 2 months, and then yours appears on their desk. And I do it in a quality paper as well. I use good linen linen paper and really good envelopes, so it really stands out. It's not
So
like
it
a
stands
junky.
out.
Yes, and it's not junky.
Real estate companies do that with
Yeah.
advertisement.
Yeah,
and,
but it
they're
works.
good at it.
It works. Just a little hint.
Wesley, we've got so many other things that we haven't even touched on. AI company of yours. We haven't talked almost at all about the books and you being an author. I would absolutely love to have you back and pick up this conversation from there. This was really great. I think it's a good time for us to wrap up.
Thank you.
Anything you want to say at the end? Can you promote some of the places? Where can people find you? Where can people read you?
If you go to, I've got so many books, so I won't name all the books, but you can if you visit wesleybaker.com, you can see my blog on there, and you can also click a link to go onto the shop and you can buy a signed copy. Alternatively, you can go on your big shop called Amazon and buy the books. They're all on there. If you type in Wesley Baker, you will find them, but there are others. But look for Echo Travel memoirs. You'll find it. Echoes of a Season, Spanish Sunshine, Echoes in Andalusia, Echoes in Mallorca. It's a pattern there, you see. And the novel is The Spy Who Found Me, which is a romantic thriller. It's good. It travels all over Europe. It's exciting. Very relevant for modern time. You should certainly read that one. And on my travel company is pureonetravel.com. If you go there, you'll see some amazing travel things and just, sign up for our newsletters. That's all really.
How about your podcast?
Podcast, well, we've got Pure Vacation. I've got quite a few, but let's just say Pure Vacations podcast. That's one talking about the travel industry. We tend to have people senior in the travel industry, directors of tourist boards and everything else that discuss their area. It's a well-followed podcast. It's growing all the time. We're looking at interesting guests. We have a range of guest types that we have come on. I'd love you to listen to that as well if you get a chance.
Definitely will. Wesley, thank you so much. This was a great pleasure.
Real pleasure.
Very excited to have you on again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.